Thank you. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony. Earlier this year, I raised concerns about Huawei's infiltration of the Five Eyes intelligence networks, and I raised them with Secretary Pompeo, who replied warning that the network of the Five Eye partners could be vulnerable and could affect joint mobilization efforts if Huawei hardware and technology was present. As you know, in 2012, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence warned that mitigating risk from Huawei or ZTE is, quote, virtually impossible. Unfortunately, last month, Britain announced that it would allow Huawei to access non-core parts of its 5G network. Ambassador Strayer, can you assess how Britain's decision impacts Five Eyes?
We're quite concerned that Britain would make that decision in the end. They say they have not made a final decision, but what is leaked out there and in other parts of the world is that there's some ability to just have Huawei present in the radio access network, which is the part that's closest to the consumer. If you were able to disrupt that or to conduct espionage there, you have a significant number of other concerns. So you could stop the ability for critical infrastructure to operate or to interfere with the ability for people to be called up for their troop mobilization. So it's just as dangerous in the remote parts of the network as in the core.
And is it at least possible that Huawei's presence in non-core 5G networks could enable it to directly or indirectly access more sensitive nodes in their telecom network?
Absolutely. That's the difference between 4G and 5G, is that 5G is going to more seamlessly integrate the core and the edge. So if you have a privilege at the edge, you're probably going to be able to access the core functions as well.
And what are we doing to ensure that our other intelligence partners don't follow Britain's decision? I hope you're right that that decision is not final and that they reverse it, but what are we doing to ensure that others don't follow that?
So we've got this ongoing diplomatic campaign around the world, very active, and particularly with the Five Eyes. So we've already got Australia last August that said that they will not allow a vendor that is under the potential extrajudicial control of a foreign power. So that would prevent Huawei because of the system in China. We've had a positive decision out of New Zealand, and we're continuing to monitor and talk very closely with Canada and the United Kingdom about the future of their decisions about the 5G network. We've also had a great deal of success in Japan recently as well on this point.
Mr. Krebs, another concern that we hear quite a bit about is China and Chinese companies seeking to exert pressure within standard-setting organizations so that those organizations promulgate standards favorable to Chinese national interests. Can you tell us to what extent is this taking place and what risk does it pose?
So I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer this authoritatively, but I think based on my understanding of the way the standards process works, they are flooding the zone, so to speak. They're putting a significant amount of resources in there, not just Chinese companies coming out of China, but other companies out of other countries. But essentially what they're trying to do is set the playing field, to continue this horrible analogy, trying to set the playing field to their advantage so that their technology, their standard, they're already deploying within China. They have a standard developed. They want the global standard to follow their standard. So that's what they're trying to set up for.
And what can we do to prevent that from happening?
It's engage, work with our partners. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Continue to invest in the standards process. Again, I have my own personnel that participate in 3GPP. We just need to continue to invest. NIST does a fantastic job. A lot of our American companies between AT&T, Qualcomm, and others, they have engaged. We are holding, I think we're holding the line, but we can't let up. We have to continue pushing forward.
Another concern, Huawei has research partnerships with several U.S. universities, and the Communist Party of China uses research ventures and talent programs and exchange programs to steal and to transfer sensitive information. Since your testimony last year, have you seen a deeper awareness among American universities about this threat of espionage?
Yes, sir. Part of Chairman Burr and Ranking Member Warner have hosted a number of meetings under the CISI authorities brought together a range of stakeholders, both technology but also academia. We briefed 2 different groups of presidents and chancellors and boards of regents and others of America's universities. I've had follow-on conversations with a number of universities on some of their issues. And as a result, I think you've seen, particularly from DOJ and FBI's engagement, particularly with Confucius Institutes and other tactics that the Chinese state is using, there has been a shift. You know, I've talked about how industry is shifting. Our colleges and universities have shifted as well. So just the general risk awareness of network security.
And one final question: should the granting of student visas consider the threat that undergrads or graduate student or postdoc students, particularly from communist China, should it consider the threat of espionage or theft of intellectual property?
It should, and to a certain extent it does, but you have to keep in mind that on an 18-year-old coming out of mainland China doesn't necessarily have a file in the intelligence community all that clearly. And the second piece is they're not necessarily operationalized at that point. What happens is down the road, the phone call comes, and here I'm sitting with your family. They say, hello, by the way, when you come home next week, why don't you bring home a thumb drive or 2 with some of your research? That's how the process works.
Thank you.